Wrestling fans, promoters, wrestlers, and anyone who enjoys pro wrestling now have something new to be excited about. The Wrestling Fans International Association, the WFIA, is back. WFIA is an association that exists to promote, grow, and support professional wrestling throughout the world. Membership is free. Your membership includes a free digital bi-monthly publication of the Wrestling Fan News newsletter, association updates, voting privileges, and much more. Please go to thewfia.org, that's THEWFIA.org, and become a member today.
All right, everybody, thank you for tuning into the PWZ podcast. I want to welcome the AIWF World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. How are you today?
I'm great, brother. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. Busy day, busy week in podcasting. So we've had a lot of fun. But we're here to learn about you and your new world, or your semi-new world heavyweight title reign. With the AIWF, but do you mind if I ask you some questions regarding your career prior to that?
Absolutely. Come on.
So, I was doing some research on here, and I'm looking at who you trained with. I was amazed, first off.
Right.
Why don't we talk a little bit about this? You got to train with the Superstar Dundee, Tom Pritchard. One of my all-time favorites, beautiful Bobby Eaton. How did this all come about with you training with these gentlemen?
So what had happened was me and my friends were actually doing backyard wrestling, like the Hardys and so many guys before us. And at the time, we were in the Memphis area, and Memphis Championship Wrestling was a developmental territory for the WWF.
Right.
And they came to our hometown about once a month, and they were drawing about 30, 40 people once a month in New Bern, Tennessee. And one of my buddies that wrestled with me, his dad was actually a police officer in our hometown. So he went up to Terry Golden, who was the promoter, and said, "Hey, my son and some of his friends are trying to break in the business. Can you help them?" So Terry, being the businessman that he is, he said, "Okay, let me take a look, and we'll give him an intermission match," is what he called it. So we went and worked out one day, and he kind of corrected a few things, and that night we ended up having a match. Right. But we went for a month telling everybody, "Hey, we're professional wrestlers. We're fixing to wrestle on this thing," So there was 200 people there that night.
Wow.
So, yeah. And the intermission match ended up being semi-main event. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So he knew, and then we didn't know our elbow from our asshole at that point. You know what I mean? Right. But they saw a little something. As a matter of fact, we weren't even in the locker room with Regal and R-Truth and Daniel Bryan and all those kind of guys. We had our own separate locker room away from everybody because we weren't, in the business yet. The only guy that came over and talked to us was Reckless Youth. And that's why I'm such a huge fan of Reckless Youth, even to this day, because he was the one guy that came over to our locker room and was like, "Hey guys, I'm glad you guys are getting in the business. Keep at it. Things will get better, blah, blah, blah," and really gave us some encouraging words. So that's why I'm always a huge fan of Reckless Youth. And from there, we did that for a couple months, and then they ended up losing their developmental deal. And we called on with a local promotion. And that's when we started training with Motley Cruz and Rude from Naughty by Nature. And then that led to doing some stuff with Dr. Tom. And then eventually, I did some stuff obviously with Bobby.
You just mentioned Reckless Youth, and that guy was a guy that worked up here in the Northeast for forever, and he was one of my favorites at that time. And it's kind of a shame because he was signed to the Memphis area, correct, as developmental. Yeah. Then he never made it up to called up, which I always thought that guy should have been on television. I was always such a huge fan of his.
Yeah, they just he was the first internet darling, right?
Yeah.
He was the first one that all the magazines were talking about that wasn't a signed guy and that kind of thing. And I just feel like they just had no idea what to do with him. You know what I mean? And we're talking about early 2000s WWF too. So, I mean, this was the time period where you had to be 6'3", 270 pounds to really get a good look. And here he was my height, 5'8", 5'9", you know what I mean, 180 pounds. So I'm sure it was just a complete culture shock to them that this guy had any buzz whatsoever, you know, but he was a phenomenal guy. I still go back to a lot of his stuff, and some of the stuff was doing even then was very innovative.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you teamed up with Bobby? I want to know how you got hooked up with Bobby, and I want to talk about one of the companies that you guys worked for there together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bobby and I had actually wrestled each other in 2004 on a Thanksgiving show in 2004, and that was a huge experience for me because Bobby Eaton was one of my heroes growing up. I was always gravitated to those seamless Southern heels, the Bobby Eatons, the Tully Blanchards, the Arn Andersons, Ted DiBiase, Ric Flair, that whole thing. So Bobby was one of my favorites of all time. So when I got to work him, it was amazing. Then about 4 or 5 years later, he was going to be moving to Arkansas. And of course, this was later in his career. So they were looking for a young guy to team with, you know, that could kind of take the brunt of the matches. So Bobby could still have tag matches and still work and things of that nature. So they were going to have one guy tag with him in Arkansas, and they were going to have one guy tag with him in Tennessee. Well, I was the guy picked for Tennessee, but then the guy in Arkansas, someone got in his ear and said, "Oh, why would you do that? It wouldn't be a good idea." Blah blah blah. So he backed out, and I was like, "I'll do Arkansas too." So I ended up tagging him with him. Me and him tagged for 2 years as Midnight Gold, and we went all over the South, you know, doing that.
Yeah. I heard he was just I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I heard that he was just a tremendous human being, like so kind.
He was one of the greatest in-ring wrestlers ever, but he was a better person. And I think that says loads about him. He would give you the shirt off his back even if he just met you. And I watched him do things of that nature. He would go into grocery stores, and then he'd come out, and some guy that was down on his luck, he'd have a bag full of, you know, groceries from the grocery store, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. He was just that type of guy.
We were talking last night. I did a podcast. We did a retro podcast discussing Halloween Havoc 1989. And we're talking about during this that period. That's when the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette were doing their face run in NWA. It was amazing how just the crowd was going bananas over Cornette and the Midnight Express. Probably just a few months earlier, they were just going crazy how much they hated him.
Oh yeah, so, I mean, they were just masters of their craft. You know what I mean? Like Bobby was really, really good. I mean, he used to call me the captain of Midnight Gold. That was our tag name. And like, what happened was I would put together our tag matches, and I would go to him and I would present what we were going to do. And every once in a while, he'd have a question like, "Why are we doing this?" or "Why are we doing that?" But once I explained my thought process, he was like, "Yeah, that's great," you know, and we would go from there. It was just, it was a really big thing for my confidence. You know, here's a guy that, you know, I grew up idolizing, who's one of the greatest ever. And like, I'm leading this thing. And like, he's like, "Oh, you're doing a great job," you know? And the fun thing about Midnight Gold was the entire 2 years that we wrestled together, he never once let me take a pin. Really? Every time a promoter came up and said, "Hey, yeah, we want to beat Greg," he would go, "No, we're not beating Greg. We're going to beat me." You know what I mean? So he never let me take a pin that entire run.
Were you part of that tribute show that took place a bunch of years ago? Before you had passed?
Yeah, it was on the other side of the state, and of course, with my schedule now, it was going to be hard to make it.
Right. Okay. I remember when that came out. I had purchased it on Fight just based on the, you know, it being a tribute to him, and I had a lot of fun with it. You know, I thought it was an amazing show. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
Yeah. So you guys specifically know, I used to get this television show up here I live in Connecticut, so I don't get one thing that I always gravitated towards when I was getting into professional wrestling or discovering a lot of different things was Southern professional wrestling, which still to this day, it holds up better than anything else. And stuff out of the Northeast, I didn't really care as much for. So of course I got into tape trading, yada, yada, all that kind of fun stuff. But for a little while, I got traditional championship wrestling up here for a brief period, but it was on at like 4 or 5 in the morning. I remember I just had my first kid. I'd wake up and it was on, you know what I mean? So I'd always wake up each week when it was on and watch it and started recording it. I thought this was an amazing television show, I thought. And how did you hook up there with those guys? And tell me about your
So,
time there. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, traditional championship wrestling was a huge thing for me and my career. You know, number
Yeah.
one, I'd never been on anything national like
Right.
that before. But what had happened was, so me and Bobby were a tag team, and we were trying to get booked with TCW, but the promoter Matt Riviera,
Hmm.
he really wanted Midnight Express. He didn't want Midnight Gold. He wanted Midnight Express, which is understandable. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so me and him actually ended up on a random show in the middle of Arkansas and nowhere Arkansas, you know. And
Hmm.
it was one of those things where it was a Sunday, it was supposed to be something happened, and the promoter comes up and goes, "Well, listen, guys, you know, there's not a lot of people here, but if you still want to wrestle, you can wrestle, but I don't know if I can pay you," that kind of thing. And me being the guy that I am, I'm like, well, I'm right here, I'm gonna wrestle, right?
Right.
So I go out there with this kid, and we just have a hell of a match. The kid's only had about 4 or 5 matches at this point, but we go out and we have a really good, solid opening match. And I
Right.
get to the back, and Matt goes, "How long have you been training the kid?" And I go, "Well, he's not my kid. He's so and so's kid." He goes, "That's not, you didn't train him?" I was like, "No." I was like, "You've never met him before?" "No." So you just went out there and had that match with that kid you've never met before until today. And I was like, "Yeah." And I was booked on everything Matt ever did after that. You know, and that's why I tell guys, you never know where opportunity is going to come. You know, I tell
Right.
guys all the time, you know, worry about the money and all that kind of stuff later. You know, I mean, learn how to wrestle, learn how to work, learn about opportunities. Even to this day, with 23 years in the business, if I feel something is a huge opportunity for me, I'll go do it for free, just
Right.
because, you know, I see the vision past the dollar signs. You know,
Right.
and Matt was really, he understood who the Golden Boy Greg Anthony was. He was a big fan of Nelson Royal and guys like that, and he saw that kind of thing in me. He's like, well, you don't have to change him one bit. A lot of promoters were trying to say, well, you need to have abs, or you need to do this, you need to get in good enough shape to get in trunks. And Matt never was like that with me. He's like, you're great the way you are. I love the fact that you do it the way you do it. So like,
Mhm.
it was a huge confidence to me, and I ended up being probably the most well booked guy on that entire show, because we were part of the Empire, you know, which was the top heel faction. Then it
Right.
got to a point where Matt wasn't really wrestling, because he is injured, and he was, all the stress of being a promoter at this large company and things like that. And he wasn't wrestling on his own shows, and therefore I was the workhorse for the group. So I ended up being one of the most well booked guys on the entire show. So it was a huge opportunity for me, and something that I still lean back on to this day.
The thing with that promotion, I thought there was so much promise with that promotion, as is, that every few years something comes along and there's always like a promotion that has a tremendous amount of promise and then will kind of fade away after a short period. And it's unfortunate that company fell into that, because I really enjoyed that. It reminded me of the wrestling that I really grew up watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought it was so enjoyable.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but we see it quite a bit. To
Yeah.
me, there's a Southern bias
Hmm.
to professional wrestling. Like, if we would have had the same support from the wrestling community that Ring of Honor had,
Right.
you know what I mean? And then people, constantly, putting over our results, and hey, they're coming to town, and all that kind of stuff from the wrestling media. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
think we would still be in business to this day. But it was one of those things, like, everyone kept trying to push us aside, and they wouldn't give us our just due. There was a time when I felt like our production was definitely better than Ring of Honor's.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was tremendous. Ring of Honor, especially in the earlier days, looked they were just recording on a camcorder. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like an old school camcorder. It looked like it was a outdated camcorder at that in the earliest
Yeah.
days.
And
Yeah.
we had a full production truck that was in the building. What I mean? We were top notch. And then we had guys that really were passionate about wrestling, really loved the old school, hard hitting Southern style of professional wrestling, like Jason Kincaid and the
Hmm.
Heat, Sigmund, Matt Sigmund, myself, you know, just Tim Storm, King Shane Williams. We just had, just top to bottom, it was one of the best rosters I've ever seen. So it was disheartening when it didn't work out like we wanted it to. But like I said, it was a great experience overall.
It looked like the buildings were pretty decent sized buildings, and
Yeah, I mean, we knew our market. We weren't trying to
yeah,
run 3,000 seat arenas. We were
right.
running 500 to 1,000, you know what I mean? And we were doing very well with those. You know, we always had a packed house. We always had, you know, rabid fans. You know, that wasn't the issue. It's just like to get to that next level, we needed the wrestling community. We needed the media to kind of hook on and say, hey, this is the thing. This is the next big thing. Everyone needs to check this out. Then all of a sudden those casual fans would have started coming in, and then we would have been off and running.
Right. You also had guys like Ken Resnick and Chris Cruz in there doing announcing and commentary, which I love. I'm a huge Ken Resnick fan. I love that guy. He was
he's one of the nicest guys too. So
yeah. So obviously Tim Storm was there, and he was kind of a big shot there, I guess, for in ring, and that's the first time I had the opportunity to see Tim Storm before he before the NWA days. So, and you got a chance to work him there, I believe, right? Correct?
Yeah, we worked each other. We worked each other like once or twice in TCW, but we worked each other. Yeah. We worked each other more after TCW.
Okay. What's it like working with him?
I mean, he's a big, strong bull. I mean, he's close to 60 years old now, and can still knock your teeth down your throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't like some of the NWA stuff once Billy Corgan got a hold of him, because I felt like they were diminishing Tim. Like they were talking about him being the high school teacher, and he's old and he's this, and the fact that Tim got over in spite of that kind of stuff.
Yes,
because Tim is who Tim is, and he's like a Bobby Eaton in a way that he's a super nice guy, behind the scenes and stuff like that, and that kind of radiates through what he was doing on television. But to be his age and be the world's heavyweight champion, and to be that kind of that elder statesman to the NWA now, it's fun to see.
You just brought up like I know obviously you were said it about Tim, but what are your thoughts on the current NWA and Billy Corgan?
I hate it. I really hate it because there's a couple reasons. One, because I was a part of the NWA when Billy Corgan bought it.
Okay.
And when Billy Corgan bought it, I was livid when he bought it, because I had done a seminar a couple years prior to that at Cauliflower Alley.
Okay.
Where Billy Corgan had kind of laid out his vision for professional wrestling. And to me, that did not correlate with what the NWA should be or professional wrestling should be, in my opinion. Okay. So I was upset that he bought it to begin with. And then when he first got it, it was announced like in April, I believe, that he was buying it or going to buy it or whatever. And he basically said he wasn't going to have any members. He wasn't going to have any territories. It was just going to be him. So that obviously ticked us all off.
Right.
And then he backed off that for a little bit, and he was talking about, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. So we really didn't know for months and months. And then 2 weeks before October 1st, he tells everybody, I'm not going to have affiliates. You guys can't be NWA after October 1st. So I had 2 weeks to rebrand my entire company. So, I had to change my website. I had to change my Facebook. I had to change all my signage. I had to redo everything in 2 weeks. It was a huge expense, obviously, to do that kind of
thing. I can imagine.
But the thing that really bothered me the most is stuff like this. When they first started with the NWA television, they completely mimicked the 85 set, right? It had the ring, it had the desk, had the I mean, it looked exactly like it did back then. And he was getting so much good press off of, oh, look how old school this looks. This is awesome, blah, blah, blah. And people were going nuts for it because it was old school, what people have been clamoring for years. And then they put out a statement saying, basically, listen, we're not your nostalgia company. We're going to be very progressive. We're going to be the most progressive company that you've seen to date. So basically, shitting on everything everyone loved about it anyway. Then Edge himself gets on Twitter and says the same thing. Hey, I love this stuff. This stuff is awesome. You guys are old school, blah, 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 and starts putting them over strong. Then all of a sudden they get on their Twitter and it's like, oh, thank you, Edge. We love that. We're so glad to be that, and all this kind of stuff. So it was completely hypocritical, that they're trying to, I call them mock old school. So they're trying to mock old school. But then when people say they're old school, oh, we're not old school. But then when someone like Edge says it, then it's like, oh, yeah, we're old school. You know what I mean? That's to where guys like me and Herb Simmons and out in St. Louis area and guys like us, we're old school through and through. We don't falter no matter what anyone says.
Right. I remember after that first episode aired, a lot of people were raving about how good it was. I liked the first season. first 2 seasons, but then it kind of slowly started to change, and then the pandemic happened, and then once it came back, it was just like, I don't know what, about a good 2 or so years. It's been like kind of, I still watch it because I'm very picky about what professional wrestling I do watch, because I'm very old school. Like, I'll still watch the Herb Simmons show each and every Sunday.
Yeah.
But, it's slowly, and as I was discussing with a friend, like my friend just said that it's progressively getting worse and worse each week. So it's harder to watch.
Part of the reason too is I said this back then was, okay, the set looks great. It looks like 1985. It looks like old school. The bell rings, and it's just like everything else wrestling wise out there right now.
Right.
There's nothing really quote unquote old school about the wrestling. Right. It's just some of the things that they're presenting are old school. The one thing that he's done right was having Trevor Murdoch as world champion, which I pitched when I was a member of the NWA. I was like, that's the guy that should be leading our charge right there. And no one listened to me. But even with him, I think Trevor's a 2-time champion, but he's been champion for less than 6 months total. You know what I mean?
As much as they, it was really cool that he got the belt, they didn't really do much with him as champion. It seemed like once he got the belt, he didn't really defend it often, or he just mostly came out on TV with the belt and just kind of talked a lot.
I mean, this is a guy that's, he's probably 280, 300 pounds.
Right.
He still moves really well. He's really believable. And he was trained by Harley Race.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So why wouldn't this guy be the poster boy for your company, especially the NWA?
Yeah.
So it's just, and he's a good friend of mine too. Like I love him to death, and I think the world of him. And it pains me to see him get politicked out or whatever the case may have been.
Have you seen him teaming up with Mike Knox at all?
Of course, I've seen them like win the tournaments and stuff like that, but I haven't actually seen any of the matches. Right.
I think that that's one of the good things about the current NWA. To be honest with you, that's one of the things that I watch it each week because I don't know. It's those 3 letters that get me. It's kind of habit. Yeah. I've supported the NWA through all its different variations from the, after WCW and all that other stuff. And it's just kind of habit, I guess, that, and I've always been a lover of the NWA for decades. So there's not a whole lot to enjoy about it, really. And it's not very old school, like the wrestling itself. That's like you said, it's just that Knox and Murdoch is actually one of the things that I enjoy the most about the television.
I'm gonna go check
Jax Dane. What's that?
Oh yeah. I said I may go check out some of their tag stuff now that you say that. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like I've loved the NWA my whole life, and it's like I said this when we got kicked out of the NWA years ago, was when you're in NWA, you're not NWA for life, you're NWA for a little bit. You know what I mean? Every time someone new takes over, it's like they try to erase everything that's happened before them. And to me, the whole point of the NWA is that it's history. You know what I mean? Right. When we were an NWA company, our tagline was "History is here." Because that's exactly what those 3 letters mean. But I was a 3-time NWA National Heavyweight Champion. You know what I mean? The record's 4. You know what I mean? Like, and when they start doing tournaments and bringing back that title and I've never got a phone call. I've never talked to Billy Corgan once, and I was an owner of an NWA territory. So it's like, what do you do from there?
He's very picky, I guess, as to who he brings in as former NWA talent and podcasters. And, there's the guy, I'm sure you know him, Jason Cali, out of California, who's been covering the NWA for years, probably a decade and a half. And he didn't seem to get any perks, you know what I mean? So he's been he was a huge historian. And then they got this other guy that comes in and they just tagged him in as basically as their guy, you know what I mean? That just kind of started covering him.
Yeah, and the thing, it's just like I said, it's disheartening sometimes because, we do love the NWA so much, but it's like Billy Corgan, to me, I love music. You understand? Yeah. I'm a huge fan of music too, but I'm not going to produce Billy Corgan's album. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he should be running a wrestling company. It's fine that he loves wrestling and stuff like that, but like, he's not a booker. You understand? Booking is a very it's a lost art form in itself. You know what I mean? I've got to sit under some amazing learning trees when it comes to booking, and I consider myself a wrestling booker. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
something that I take a lot of pride in. But to him, it's just like it's him and Tony Khan and a lot of other guys that are nowadays. It's, hey, we got this new action figure. We'll put him against this action figure. Oh, it's pretty cool. Okay, now what's next? Okay, this guy. You see what I'm saying? Like there's no rhyme or reason in here.
They're entertainers, so to speak, or they know how to write for sports entertainment, I guess, if you will. There's a difference between the two. Some people, your normal Joe, do not understand what that is. I guess the difference between sports entertainment and professional wrestling. I guess, or old school people will get that reference in a way.
Well, you want to hear my theory on all this? I call it the WWE conundrum, is what it is. Basically, WWE, they've been telling us for the last 20, 30 years that professional wrestling is phony, it's fake, it's entertainment, which basically means that every decision made within it is arbitrary. That if I want so-and-so to be the world champion, all I have to do is write it, right? But that's not really the case. The booking is you're listening to the people, you're listening to what's going on, and, okay, that guy's over. That guy needs an opportunity. We need to send him in this direction. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what real bookers do. Like I've gotten, we've all had them, we've had heels on our show that their girlfriends will go out there and cheer for them, during the events. And I've had to say, hey, quit cheering for your boyfriend because I'm trying to listen to the people and you're swaying the audience when you do shit like that. And I can't gauge what I need to do next because you guys are doing that. So, I don't mind you coming to the shows and stuff like that, but help us along. You know what I mean? Boo your boyfriend instead of cheering him.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of old school people left. You mentioned Herb Simmons, who I think puts on a very fine product. I recently had him on the show, and he made it a point to, before getting to the interview, that making sure that I knew he was old school and that he had puts on an old school product. I was very familiar with his product when I approached him about being on. So I'm very glad that I got to speak with him. And you, of course, were just there. I'm not sure. I saw the date recently. I'm sorry. It was at the end of the month last month. You wrestled Kowalski in a steel cage. Tell us, how did that all come about? And you walked away. You dove off the top of the cage.
Yes, 42 years old. A multitude of injuries over those 42 years, and I dove off the top of a cage. And it looked really good. So,
it did. Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Like I was, I've been in. That was my third cage match, I think.
Okay.
So you don't get a lot of opportunities for cage matches in professional wrestling because not a lot of people have a cage. They're expensive. You know what I mean? And then obviously to be in the main event, stuff like that. So it's the third one I got to do, and climbing up there, you kind of get up there and you're like, well, there's no way down. There's one way down. So
can't change your mind.
Can't change your mind now. So, I mean, Herb, I love Herb. I love his product. Me and him are very simpatico on what we believe about professional wrestling. Obviously, he's going to be more St. Louis and I'm going to be more Memphis, that kind of thing. But I mean, overall, that's what I love about professional wrestling is there's still this common core that is threaded through all those territories. No matter how different it is from Memphis to San Francisco to New York to Florida, it's no matter how different all those places are, there's still that common thread that puts them all together. So, and Herb is a perfect example of that. Like he runs a very old school product. I love it. I love going up there. I can't wait to go back. Cage match was amazing. One of those, if you told me at 9 years old, that, hey, at 42 years old, you're going to dive off with a flying elbow off the top of a cage and the entire gymnasium is going to go nuts. I mean, I would have told you were lying. So
the people loved it. I'm telling you, the reaction from the crowd. I mean, it was just like a single camera angle, but the crowd did love it. You can see them pop when that happened.
Oh yeah, it was. We talk about magic moments. That was one of those magic moments, goosebump kind of things. So anytime we're able to create that, that's a blessing to all of us. I mean, I know all the people there that night, they'll talk about that for years to come. Remember the time we went to wrestling and that guy dove off the top they might even remember my name, but they'll remember that guy dove off the top of the cage.
Right. Let's see. So, I want to talk about the AIWF for a little bit. You
Sure.
recently won the world title, from Ty Tyson. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. So, and this is you've held this, what, a few months now?
Yeah, I won June 3rd, I believe.
June 3rd.
So
Okay.
120 days or something like that. But I mean,
Okay.
um, yeah, it's one of those things. AIWF. We talked about how our love for the NWA.
Hmm.
I love a good territory system. I love
Yeah.
that kind of. I love the NWA. Remember, I don't know if you remember when Global was going in Dallas. It was the
Yes.
Global Wrestling Federation, and I remember as a kid watching that, and they were like, "Well, this is the North American champion," and me being, that age, I go, "Well, if there's the North American champion, there's got to be a South American champion, or there's got to
Right.
be a European champion." You see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I love territories in general. So, and what the AIWF is, it's been in business since 1992.
Hmm.
They've had world champions such as Ricky Morton and Buddy Landell,
Yep.
um, who was Buddy Rose's partner.
Doug Summers. That
Doug
one.
Summers. Doug Summers
Yep.
was champion. We've had a lot of really good world champions since '92, and there's 100 promotions across 36 countries. You know what I mean? So, and to me,
Yep.
that's an amazing feat. So, I'm proud to represent the brand and being the world champion. I'd love to be able to go to all of them. I know I can't go to all of them, but I mean, I'll definitely try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's exciting to see the territory system still alive in some aspects, and
Mhm.
we're trying to bring it up as much as we can. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. They
More brand
have,
awareness, I guess.
yeah, they got a TV. I watch that. Try to watch that semi regularly. They film that weekly. They have put it on their Roku app. Um, it's a really good system. Matt Classic, is a good friend of the show. He always sends talent. That's how we got together, and
Yep.
he's got a good thing going. I think with the AIWF, goes back, and the territory system is not necessarily alive with the National Wrestling Alliance, but the AIWF is keeping that system alive, with the various territories throughout the entire world, and I think it's a good thing. I always, one of my things was when I was growing up, and when I heard about the NWA and its various territories, I always tried to find the other territories, especially through the
Yeah.
'90s and the 2000s. I always tried to get the tapes and stuff like that. So that's the fun part about it, is to learn about all that other stuff.
The fun thing is we're one of the last generations to do the tape trading.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I get so frustrated at my students and just young guys in general. They don't realize how hard it was for us to get footage from Japan in the
That could,
'90s.
yes. Yep.
You know what I mean? And like, just footage from anywhere, and I tape traded. I tried to get all the stuff that I could, get my hands on everything I could so I could absorb much wrestling. And now they have it at their fingertips on YouTube and things of that nature. And like, they still don't study as much as I do. I still watch, an hour to 2 hours of wrestling a day
Yep.
just on various things.
I'm pretty much up there. Yeah. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
probably, when we get out of here, I'll probably go watch something. But the funny thing is like New Japan did not have a TV show in the United States at the time. You know what I mean?
No.
All Japan did. No, the only thing that you might be able to get was some lucha libre on like the Spanish speaking station, which
Right.
we used to get like AAA or CMLL here and there. So and that was like you had to catch it. It wasn't one of those things that was like it was on a specific time each and every week. So
I just remember,
yeah.
obviously, the guy that really got my gears turned on that was Great Muda. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think I was 7 or 8 years old when I first saw the Great Muda.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they have wrestling in Japan, and I was like, I started, that's when it kind of started getting the wheels turning for me. It's like, and then you'll be watching Saturday mornings, and they'll show you an old world of sport, and you'll see Inoki versus Muhammad Ali, and you're like, oh, who's that? And they're like, well, that's Antonio Inoki. He's Japanese wrestler, and you're like, okay, and then you start kind of learning this thing piece by piece.
Yeah.
So I actually got to see one of the first shows I ever went to as a kid. The NWA did a show at the Mid-South Coliseum here in Memphis.
Mhm.
And I got to see Sting and the Great Muta.
That's awesome. They
Yeah.
wrestled in the New Haven Coliseum. I lived outside of New Haven, Connecticut, and that was the Coliseum that I would go to all my wrestling for here. It was the WWF area, and for like a straight year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, WWF didn't come there because I guess that they were, lost their negotiations with the New Haven Coliseum or whatever. They weren't coming here. So the NWA tried to come in. They ran two shows. One of them was headlined by Flair and Steamboat during that era. And I remember Sting and Muda being on the show as well. So, I mean, we got to see some really good stuff during that time period.
Yeah, the main event that night was actually supposed to be Flair and Funk.
Wow.
And Funk, I think I read somewhere where Funk actually ended up, he was really sick or something during that time period. So I ended up being Flair and Dick Slater, which is actually a pretty good backup when you think about it.
That's not bad. Yeah.
That's not bad. If you're not going to have Terry Funk, Dick Slater's a good backup for that.
That's a guy that I feel does not get enough talk these days. Talking about all the legends that people talk about, like Funk and Flair and all these guys, Dick Murdoch and all these guys. It's just like Dick Slater that guy was a beast. That guy was amazing in the ring and in his promos, and he had it all, I think.
Well, I was on a show with Arn Anderson a few years ago, and we were sitting there talking. He said, you know who really got me in the business, or really what made me want to get in the business? And I said, who? And he pointed out to the gimmick tables because Bob Orton Jr. was out there. Mm-hmm. And he said, Bob Orton Jr. and Dick Slater tagging up. That was the first time I was watching wrestling. I go, these guys are the ones stirring the drink. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but they're the ones making it happen. You know what I mean? That's what kind of got him really geared up to want to be a wrestler. And I was like, that's awesome. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they were an amazing tag team. Bob and Dick Slater were a great tag team.
I remember in the early 90s, Dick Slater and Dick Murdoch were teamed up in WCW for a brief period. The Hardliners.
The Hardliners, yeah. I've stolen that name, by the way. I made a tag team in my own company, the Hardliners, for a little bit, based specifically on that.
That's awesome. I remember, I think they attacked the Steiners, I think, at a Clash of the Champions or somebody. I'm trying to remember if it was them or not, if that's who they attacked. But they came in after a tag match and just destroyed whoever was in the ring. And then saw them once in a while after that, and then just boom, disappeared. But WCW was weird like that at that time period. People would come in and then just disappear without any.
I tell you one tag team that doesn't get any love, and people probably don't even remember that it actually happened, was Greg Valentine and Terry Taylor. Yeah, they were the U.S. tag champs for a little bit.
I don't remember this. Wow.
You don't remember that? They were a really good tag team. They had some really good. It was like during the Watts era of WCW.
Okay.
And they had some really, really good tag matches with a lot of guys, and it was just fun to see them together because it's an odd pairing, but it's not an odd pairing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not completely odd, but it's like you never would have said, "Hey, let's tag up Greg Valentine with Terry Taylor." But like they ended up being like a really, really good tag team.
Wow, that sounds like it would be awesome. That was a period I was kind of like hit or miss for me. Like I would watch and then not watch, and then I got out of it for a couple years, and then I went full force once I got back into it. So, do
you remember back to beautiful Bobby Eaton? You remember Bobby Eaton and Steve Kern tagging up?
I do. That was actually something that I had forgotten about, and then one day I came across a video on YouTube. I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then that's when I started watching. I was like, "Oh my god, I do remember this!" Like, yeah, I just actually got Steve Kern's book last week in the mail. I gotta open it up and start reading it.
I bet that's a great book.
Yeah.
I'm so behind on my reading right now. I'm still in the middle of Ole's, but I have so little time to read anymore. Yeah. But my favorite book of all time is the Gary Hart book for sure.
I gotta try to find that. I'm still in the middle of what's her name? Joyce Pouston. She wrote a book on her memories of the AWA. She was a photographer.
Yeah, I saw that. That looked like a good book too.
Yeah, I got that a few weeks ago. I finally opened it up. I'm about halfway through, and it's basically a fan's perspective about watching there through the AWA territory and getting involved. And I gotta tell you, man, this is an incredible book. The amount of pictures that she took and put in this book, it's awesome. If you're an AWA fan, I highly recommend this book. Seriously.
I just love historical stuff like that altogether. My friend Mark James, he does all the Memphis books,
right?
And I love all those, The Gary Hart book, it actually only had like one or two printings, So it's really, really hard to find. There's on eBay, it's going for like $1,000 or something.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll find that one, but
but it's one of the best books. If you're a young guy in the business and you're wanting to understand, he breaks down character development, he breaks down match structure, he breaks down pretty much everything psychology that you would want in professional wrestling. And the number of gimmicks that he created and gave to people that ended up sending them on a different path is just astonishing. So
there was a picture that just surfaced of him. I guess there's a tribute page to him on Facebook that I just came across, and they posted a picture of him in the 1960s. He had his slick back blonde hair, no facial hair. And I was just like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. It was incredible to see something like that.
Yeah. Well, he did like a gay gimmick in the beginning. Did you know
really?
that?
No, I didn't. No.
He talks about it in the book. He talks about how he didn't really feel comfortable doing it, but like obviously the promoter wanted him doing it. It was an opportunity for him to make a living in wrestling, so he did it anyway. But he tried to get away from it as quick as he could. So as soon as another territory opened up, he dropped in and went there. But he have you ever seen I don't know what exactly where it was from, but there's a video of him where he takes the coat hanger and chokes someone with a coat hanger on television. And it's one of the most vicious things you'd ever seen.
That sounds familiar. I'm trying to place that though. I don't know where that was from. So no, but it does sound familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was one of my favorite managers, and I don't think that he gets enough love. Seriously. I think that guy there's something special about that guy. I thought that throughout his I watched him at World Class. I watched him in the NWA, and he was tremendous.
Yeah, just like I said, just a great mind for the business. The thing that I didn't like about his managing side of stuff was he always was like, well, if the babyface came towards him, he wouldn't back up at all because in his mind he's 6'4", you know what I mean, and he's this big tough guy, so he shouldn't be scared of any babyface. But like, because to me, I want the heel manager to be that kind of thing. But to each his own, I guess.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense what you said about him. The heel should be afraid because the baby face is supposed to be,
Yeah. Even just a little bit. I mean, even if you put your fist up like you're gonna fight, but you keep taking that half a step back as they're coming towards you, you know what I mean? Right. Just a little something to show that you're a little bit of a pansy in the situation.
So you talked about owning an NWA territory, correct? So was this NWA Mid-South? Was that what you?
It was.
Okay. Yeah. How did you end up getting involved with the NWA as a territory owner?
So when Traditional Championship Wrestling folded, and at that time period, you kind of have a choice to make. It's like, okay, I just came off this national television product. I can try to get booked as much as I can, wherever I can, for as much money as I can, for as long as I can. I can do that, or I can kind of go to the promoting side. And I looked at my area, this West Tennessee area that I'm in, and I just didn't like the way professional wrestling was being presented in my area. We had a lot of trouble with alcohol and drugs and pedophilia and a lot of things of that nature. And it really bothered me because I would go to Walmart, and I would tell people, I could talk to someone, I tell someone I was a professional wrestler, and they kind of give me that look, like, oh, you do that? Because it had that kind of reputation in my hometown. And it bothered me. So, like, I took it upon myself to start my own company because I wanted to clean up all that kind of stuff. And, we've done a really good job. If people hear bad things about professional wrestling now, they know it's not my company. You understand? Because we've done a really good job of making sure we're a family-friendly, Christian-based. We have a ministry attached to my wrestling company, Genesis 3224. We hold services at my building on Sundays. We are trying to, embed ourselves in the community as something positive and good. And we've done a really good job over that. This will actually be our 9-year anniversary in a couple of weeks. That we've been going, and it was just one of those things. I had to clean it up and and I wanted guys to have a place to where they could learn, they could be trained correctly. That was another issue. We had guys that were getting trained, and they were getting trained for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then they were getting thrown into matches, and it was god awful. You know what I mean? So we have a training school now. We do birthday parties for kids. We run 3 shows a week right now. We're just all over the place. So it's been a blessing to everybody.
Sorry, I muted my mic. That's pretty awesome. I did read that you had a ministry attached. I'm happy to hear that, because that seems to be the thing that's like so few and far between. I know there's a promotion that I do work for up here in New Age Wrestling, and the man is the promoter is a Catholic man, and we do a prayer service before the show. Each and every show, we all huddle in a circle, gather, each and every hand. And I had never ever experienced anything like that in my time in professional wrestling, and I thought that was possibly the most amazing thing. That was, it's promoting positivity, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna tell you this past year, so I've had 2 major heart surgeries. I was actually born with no right arteries. I just have left arteries. Okay. And in 2017, I had 2 70% blockages in my heart, and then I had a 90% blockage in my widowmaker, and I was 35 years old. And it obviously opened my eyes, and I felt the power of prayer just kind of wash over me, because we had a lot of people praying for me, and obviously in that kind of nature. So that's what led me on the path to Jesus Christ and getting saved and that kind of nature. But this year we did it last year I went in they thought they saw another blockage on the scan they did on me. Mm-hmm. And we went in for the thing, and I prayed the entire time, like, please don't let this happen. Because if they find a blockage this time, they're basically going to have to crack me open and do open heart surgery, is what it is. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and we went in there for the heart cath to see what was going on or where it was. And they, the doctor's working on me, blah, blah, blah. And then he just kind of moves everything, like the lights away and all the equipment away for a second. He kind of looks at me and he goes, we didn't find anything. He said that the blockage that's supposed to be there, not only is it not there, but the stenosis that's supposed to be in that artery, it's not there either. Everything looks perfect. And like, it was just a miracle from God, in my opinion. And so after that, we went, and I started doing, like you said, we started holding services at my building. And then we started holding a prayer before each event. And since we've been doing that, this has been one of the best years we've had in Pro Wrestling Mid-South. So to me, it's absolutely all glory to God. You know what I mean? And like, I love talking about it, because it's just, I can't believe how many years I spent, not down that path, down the wrong path. Not that I was a heathen or not that I was this, but I just wasn't living for God. I wasn't living for Jesus Christ. And like, I can tell the difference in my life since I've changed that.
Yeah. I think it was 9 years ago that my life, I went through a rough time. I had been married previously. I had, during that time period, during my divorce with my first wife, I had spent some time drinking and acting the fool, I guess you could say. And then I met my second wife during that time period, who just so happens to be a pastor's daughter. So she brought me to church, and things basically, a lot of things just changed, in my life because of that. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, do I drink? Sure, but I'm not the idiot that I was during that period.
Well, see, I wasn't raised in church. Like, for me, like, it was almost an anxiety thing, as far as like, I couldn't even say the name Jesus Christ. I couldn't say the word God without being like kind of anxiety choked up, like can't talk about it. And like, to have this come full circle like this, and have all I can't even tell you how many miracles and how many coincidences that aren't really coincidences that have happened in my life over the years pertaining to God and Christ and all that kind of stuff. But it's truly a miracle, and it's truly amazing. And I can't wait to sit down one day and tell everybody everything.
But it's amazing. People don't understand that the power of prayer. When you're down and out and you're sitting there praying and a miracle happens, you gotta. It's real. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to ask you a few more questions and then
Okay.
be on the way. I want to talk about now. This was a match, of course, during your time with the NWA. This is a match you wrestled for the NWA World Title against Jax Dane. I love Jax Dane, so tell me about working with this guy.
I mean, Jax is a beast, right? I mean,
Yeah,
he's big and he's strong, and you know, the fun thing about the match you're talking about is, so I was the NWA Southern Heavyweight Champion at this
right,
time. I was that company's champion,
right.
and originally they wanted me to go out there and get beat in like 30 seconds.
Oof.
And I just told him, I was like, listen, when you talk about the NWA, especially at that time period, the big things with the NWA were Rob Conway, Jax
Hmm.
Dane, and the Empire, which I was a part of.
Right,
So I just told him, I was like, listen, I can't go out there and do that. I mean, that makes no sense to you as a company. It makes
hmm,
no sense to me as what who I am, and it's not going to help Jax anymore
right.
than anything, right?
Yeah,
So I finally convinced him to let me have the match that I wanted to have, and you see the result. I mean, I think that was one of the best Jax Dane world title matches that he had had at that point.
right.
And I mean, and actually, the fun thing about it was that was the first time his father had ever seen him wrestle. Was at that
Really?
show. Yeah, and like we had that kind of match, and like the people were standing, at the end of it, and like I got to the back, and the problem was the booker didn't know me from Adam. Like he didn't know who I was and didn't know anything, so he was just coming
Right.
up with ideas because he thought it was, he saw my height and he saw Jackson's height, and he was just like, well, that guy should just kill him. But he never actually seen me work or anything like that. But once we all got on the same page, I think that, like I said, that match ended up, proving my point exactly.
Was this the Tharp era or the Marquez era? Which era?
Tharp. I was never
Tharp era.
part of the Marquette.
Okay. That's part of, now we were going back and how much we dislike the modern NWA, but I think also one of the other things about the changes in the NWA over recent years is that David Marquez is not there, because when Power first started, I thought that Marquez added a certain charm to the TV show as the announcer. Personally, I like him as an entertainer and announcer, booker, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, me and Marquez, I don't think we ever really saw eye to eye. So I mean, I don't think I would have been a part of any NWA that he was a part of, really. So,
Right. Okay.
so it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I don't wish him. I don't wish him any ill will or anything.
Yeah. Greg, what do you have coming up? Anything exciting coming up? I know you're the world champion, so I'm sure you got a lot coming up.
So my next big thing is here at Pro Wrestling Mid South. I'm defending the AIWF World Heavyweight Championship against a friend of mine. Actually, he's the Unified Heavyweight Champion. His name's the Real Foot Saint, Brandon Ray, and he's
Okay.
300 pounds. He's 25 years old, and he's like a baby bull. And he moves like a cat, but hits like a bull. And leading up to him winning the Unified title in February, he's actually beaten me the last 4 times. And
Oh,
now he's challenged me for the AIWF World Heavyweight Championship. And it's one of those things I told him, I think he's an amazing talent. I think he's doing really good as the Unified Heavyweight Champion, but he doesn't have enough life experience to be a world champion. And, I laid in a hospital bed and thought I was going to die and thought I was going to get to see my children or grandchildren or anything like that. And that's the kind of thing that propels you to be a world champion. And here he
right,
is, this 25-year-old kid who's, never experienced that kind of stuff. So
right,
it's gonna be a battle of, young line versus old line, that kind of thing. We're gonna have to see what happens. That's our next big thing. I actually just signed up to visit AIWF Southwest in Gun Barrel, Texas in February. So gonna be looking forward to that. And then obviously I'll probably pop in and out for Herb Simmons and SICW, looking to maybe then I think I'm on the anniversary show for AIWF in North Carolina in March. And I'm looking to go everywhere. If there's anyone in California that'd like to fly me out, Hollywood, here I come.
make sure that you, as the AIWF champion, make it up to the Northeast, Connecticut, specifically.
Yeah,
But if you do, let me know and I'll come
yeah.
out. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that new age wrestling you're talking about, it seems like we're all on the same page. I'd love to come work for them.
Yeah, they're a very old school
share
style
my testimony
company
with them a little bit.
Yeah, they're very old school company.
Yeah.
Very traditional style. So, all right. So, where can people find you on the social media?
Social media, I'm the Golden Boy Greg Anthony on Facebook and Golden Boy Greg on Twitter. I'm really, really trying to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So I'm Greg Anthony on YouTube, and I have a plethora of like my matches, but I also have old, Memphis wrestling stuff and old Quebec wrestling and just a lot of random wrestling stuff that I've acquired over the years. So, and I'm doing little 3-minute, things like little video clips and stuff like that of me talking about wrestling now. So I'm like 50 or 60, subscribers away from 1,000. So I'm trying to get to that so I can finally get monetized on YouTube. So if anyone out there could help me with that, I would greatly appreciate it.
I'm putting the link in the description of this episode, so I want everybody to go and like it. I'm going to go over and like it as well, especially if you're talking about all that older wrestling stuff there. Then I'm definitely going to go and subscribe and get to watching some of that. So
awesome!
I want to thank you for making your way to the show, and I'm glad we were finally able to get this done. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, I could talk about wrestling all day long. I love sitting down with everybody and talking about this and kind of spreading the gospel of professional wrestling, I guess, in some of the old school ways and actually the actual gospel. Too. So, I love all it. I appreciate you having me on.
No, thank you very much. And we'll definitely have to have you back again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Available on all streaming platforms. It's professional wrestling's greatest, largest, privately owned wrestling library. All the classic hits, flips, slams, and pins of yesteryear are on one place. It's Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Check out the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, a who's who of professional wrestling's greatest spotlight stars ever to grace the squared circle, all in one place. Grab the best seat in the house for memories and mayhem on Ultimate Classic Wrestling.